And tonight on the Daily Wrap, the Club for Growth is going after GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. We'll speak to the club president to find out why they think Trump isn't the right man for president. And there's more bad news, if that's possible, for Hillary Clinton, as the heart and soul of her base, white women, are taking their votes elsewhere. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger.
Good evening.
Is Donald Trump a Republican?
You're asking me?
Well,
I'm not the Republican on this panel. I think the Club for Growth, who we're going to be speaking with the president in great detail. No, I don't think he's a Republican. If you look at his record, he's much more of a Democrat than a Republican. But I think what he has going for him is that nobody cares if he's a Republican or a Democrat.
Isn't that fascinating?
That's what they like about him.
So all we heard about all this time was that conservatives want a true conservative to be the nominee, that Romney was too moderate and McCain was too moderate, and then they get a moderate and they say, he's just the guy for us.
Except, I don't know if you call him a moderate. He's almost an extremist on different points on different sides.
Interesting. Much like you, actually.
Much like me.
Yes.
Anyway. I have so much in common with him.
To the pragmatic Mr. Unger's right. She is America's pundit, and affiliate attorney Heather Hansen is back once again. Good to be back indeed. And finally, he's a former FBI special agent, a former Navy SEAL, and currently the president of Continued Services. I keep waiting for a joke. It's not happening. Jonathan Gilliam joins us as well. You never wear a tie, Gilliam. Why is that?
No jokes, no.
You wore a tie once.
No, I wore a tie once when I helped host the show, and I almost choked myself out, so I just tend not to wear
like that idea.
It did not look natural, I agree. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download. And Donald Trump, although still a powerhouse, is beginning to feel some heat. First, a new national poll from CBS News and the New York Times shows Dr. Ben Carson is hot on Trump's heels, getting 23% of Republican voters, while Trump holds steady at 27%. For those doing the math at home, Carson has jumped 17 points in just 2 months. Meanwhile, Trump is feeling heat from some conservative groups, including Club for Growth, that just released this ad.
Which presidential candidate supports higher taxes, national health care, and the Wall Street bailout? It's Donald Trump.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Trump wants us to think he's Mr. Tell It Like It Is, but he has a record, and it's very liberal. He's really just playing us for chumps. Trump, just another politician.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Club for Growth Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So are Donald Trump's days in the spotlight numbered? We're now joined by Club for Growth president. His name is David Mcintosh, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. The Club for Growth is a national network of over 100,000 pro-growth, limited government Americans who share in the belief that prosperity and opportunity come from economic freedom. They have a great track record of holding both Republican and Democratic lawmakers accountable for their votes on fiscal issues. David, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
So why don't you think Donald Trump is fit to run the country, particularly from a fiscal perspective?
Well, we have done in-depth research into his record of statements, his positions in the past on issues, and he's not a fiscal conservative. He's probably the worst candidate of the whole field, with the exception of Bernie Sanders, on economics. He's for tax increases. He's for single-payer government-run health care. He's for using eminent domain to take private property and turn it over to developers. And he would start a huge trade war with China and Mexico that would sink a lot of our economic growth.
I got to tell you, Newsmax has gotten thousands of emails in support of Trump. He's leading in the polls, even though Ben Carson is closing. What is America missing about Donald Trump, or why do you think he's resonating so much if, as you point out, and it's clear, it's in his own words, he truly isn't a conservative, at least from a fiscal perspective?
I think he's captured the frustration that Americans have with Washington and the leaders here failing to keep their promises and just getting nothing done. The problem is what Trump would do would move in the exact wrong direction and would be a disaster for the economy. In part, I think he's really just like the politicians he's complaining about, because he's saying whatever the voters want to hear to get their support and saying it in a great, entertaining way. But then if he were ever elected, he would be terrible on anything they really care about for free markets, lower taxes, individual property rights. And that's what we're trying to point out, that he really is kind of treating the voters like they're chumps, that he can say anything and it really doesn't matter. And
Rick,
so we're...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. We're gonna use his own words and point out that what he says does matter, and would be terrible for the country.
Rick Unger here. As you know, there's a letter that's circulating which purportedly has your name on it, where you are asking for a donation of about $1 million from Mr. Trump. He says he declined it. What I'm curious about first is, did you get an indication in your meeting with him initially, preceding that letter, that he was going to make $1 million donation to Club for Growth?
Yeah, and this meeting took place before he became a candidate. Yes. He asked me to come up and visit with him. I told him, you know, we don't agree with you on taxes and trade. And he said, that's okay, you're doing some good things. Can I support you? I'd like to give you some money. I said, yeah, we will take your money, but we'll use it for free trade and low tax candidates and to support those positions. And so we left there. He said, well, send me a letter. I'll send you something. And we did. I now think maybe he was looking ahead. He thinks of politicians as people that he can buy, and perhaps was thinking he could buy the Club for Growth. We're not going to do that. We're going to just tell the truth about his record and let it speak for itself.
Well, now he's out there suggesting that because he didn't give you a donation, you're basically extorting him for not doing so. What's your response to that?
Yeah, he's been saying that for a while. My response is tell people what you do on taxes, on trade, on using eminent domain to take people's property away, and let's focus on the issues.
David, Trump has compared himself to Ronald Reagan. In the ad you show the footage of Trump acting like a Democrat, but to Trump's defense, Reagan also changed his political leanings over time. In this case, do you think that you could ever support a Donald Trump? And if not Trump, who do you see as the candidate that's closest to Club to Growth in terms of perspective on fiscal matters?
You know, I'm glad you raised that, because Reagan's an example of somebody who had true conservative principles, and the Democratic Party changed underneath him. And he shared that later. He didn't leave the party left him. In this case, Donald has said, I'm really more comfortable with the Democrats, and a lot of his ideas are liberal, big government ideas. He changed to try to get the votes to win in the Republican primary. And that's a huge difference. You know, I was lucky, younger in life. I served with President Reagan in the White House. I knew him, and Donald Trump is no Ronald Reagan.
So let me ask you this. Has Club for Growth taken a point of view on Dr. Ben Carson, who we suddenly see is moving up very close to Trump in the polls?
We've been watching that. We are reading his books and researching his positions. We'll have a white paper out on him shortly. I want to let that speak for the views of the club on Dr. Carson. One of the things that's nice to see is that there are other choices, and one of the reasons we think it's important to point out that Donald Trump is not a conservative is so that other conservatives, and we've had white papers on Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Rand Paul and Governor Walker, and said all of them would be very good for pro-growth economic policy.
David, we only have about 30 seconds, but I'm curious about your opinion on John Kasich. He's the only living person on the planet who has balanced a federal budget. I would imagine that's somebody you're keeping a close eye on as well.
We have, and we actually have released a white paper on Governor Kasich. He has a very mixed record. He did balance the budget when he was in Congress, but then as governor, he grew the whole budget in Ohio. Did it mainly by buying into Obamacare and taking the money that President Obama was offering for that. And so at the end of his terms, Ohio's government is a lot bigger and spending a lot more taxpayer money. And we think that's a problem.
That seems to be a deal breaker for some conservatives as far as expanding government, as far as Obamacare is concerned in Ohio. Interesting to see how that comes to play. So, David, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. And if you want to check out the Club for Growth, go to clubforgrowth.com. Thanks again, David.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Well, meanwhile, Newsmax TV is hosting a post-debate special featuring Ed Berliner, J.D. Hayward, Steve Malzberg. Rick and I will be there as well tomorrow night starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Newsmax TV. We'll also have special guests including Ben Carson and Mike Reagan with expert analysis from Dick Morris and John Zogby. And you could have your voice heard too. Go to newsmax.com/judge and register for our instant poll where you get to choose the winner of tomorrow's debate. Coming up, more problems for Hillary Clinton. Stay tuned.